A curse. Typically a magical effect that is supposed to ruin your life. In Adventure Time, curses are very unique. They're not there necessarily to ruin your life. Most curses in Adventure Time are either a joke, an ability upgrade to your power, or supposed to teach you something. Somehow. Finn being turned into a foot, for example, is just a joke by Magic Man. Simon's Ice Crown is definitely cursed, but given the right circumstances, it can fulfill his wishes. And the Battle Train was there to show Finn that Jake would stick with him no matter what for as long as he lives, and that at some point he needs to face the real world. One of the weirdest curses in Adventure Time is the Grass Blade, which was literally just made because the Grass Wizard thought it was a funny pun.
I just thought it would be cool. Grass blade. It's a sort of pun.
It's a blade of grass. You get it? Blade of grass. Grass blade. You get it? You get it? You get it? This cursed object was supposed to be attached to its Vera for the rest of their life, but it turns out, once you accept the blade, it doesn't do much. Sometimes curses don't even appear to be curses at first. For example, when Finn met an alternate reality incarnation of himself and they turned into a Finn sword. While nobody seems to really mention it, the sword is just Finn trapped inside of the sword with no chance of ever coming out. It shouldn't remain this way for long, because once the Finn sword and the Grass Blade met, the path was paved for the creation of one of the saddest characters in Adventure Time, Fern. To understand Fern, we need a small recap, and given that Fern's life is pretty short, it shouldn't take too long. After many adventures, Finn found himself with a broken demon sword, and since that's one of the most powerful swords in his arsenal, Finn wanted a new one. Given that Adventure Time is pretty weird, there are of course markets for pretty much everything in Ooo, including swords. Gullible as Finn is, he would eventually buy a grass blade by a vague vendor. Eventually the sword would start to haunt Finn, forcing Finn and Jake to search for the mysterious merchant who turns out to be the Grass Wizard that cursed the Grass Blade to be attached to its Vera for eternity. After accepting the curse, the blade seems to be mostly controllable, though it would act on its own if Finn found himself in danger. The other part of Fern is Finn himself, or to be more specific, the Finn sword. So, after the Lich killed the Eternal Sleeper, which was the tether that allowed Prismo to exist, the plan to resurrect Prismo was half-willingly enacted by Jake. The specifics are not that important, but through some alternate reality shenanigans, Prisma was brought back to life with Finn touching himself, not that type of touching, turning one of them into a sword.
This is me? This sword is me?
Finn sword, dude.
By the way, I have a video on that specific episode, and I'm pretty sure my interpretation is pretty spot on, especially because some people try to use what PB said here.
No, he's not even from a different timeline. Ben, he's just you.
To tell me that there's no time travel whatsoever involved in the whole Prismo debacle. Here's the thing, PB has never seen, heard, or talked to Fern, so she's completely talking out of her ass. She has no clue who Fern actually is. Anyways, subscribe with notifications on, otherwise I will curse you, and give me money on Patreon or Ko-Fi. Thank you. At some point, Finn would lose the Finn sword because he was being a huge goofball, and it would be stolen by bandit princes. Fortunately for Finn, he has a psychic connection to the Finn sword, and with that, he was able to find Finn's sword. Unfortunately, he would stab the sword with the grass blade as well. With that, the curse of the grass blade would start to whisper sweet nothings into the Finn sword's ears, presumably slowly corrupting him. During the episode Preboot, the grass blade would attach itself to the Finn sword and create Fern. Why it happens is never really explained, but my interpretation here is that Finn is rejecting the grass blade since he was trying to kill Susan. Finn's sword, on the other hand, has slowly been corrupted by the grass curse, and so he was more accepting of the grass blade. Since the grass curse has grown more and more sentient over time, it chose to leave Finn and merge with the Finn sword. All of this is important because rejection is a big part of Fern's identity.
Okay, I'm not an expert, but this seems bad.
From the moment Fern was born, rejection is the only thing he experienced. When Fern asks Jake who the real Finn is, Jake immediately points at Finn by also calling him a demon.
That one?
What?
Yeah, I don't know what you are. It's some kind of demon plant thing, probably.
At the treehouse, Bimo is immediately scared of Fern.
And I'm scared!
And Marceline, the first time she meets Fern, just says this.
Hey, aren't you that dude that totaled Starchy's motorcycle?
Which might just be a throwaway comment, but for Fern, she just accused him of theft after seeing him for the first time. Imagine how much confusion is going through Fern's head because he has all of Finn's memories, but everyone he meets is rejecting him. Jake, his literal brother, Bimo, his younger sibling, and Marceline, one of his best friends. Not only that, when Fern tries to eat food, it turns out that he can't because he's a plant and not a human. Fern has basically lost all his friends, his family, and himself in one fell swoop. So it's no surprise that Fern started to go postal. While eventually Finn is able to calm down Fern by offering him Finn cakes, symbolizing that Fern is part of Finn and by extension still part of the family, the feeling of being rejected is probably still there. Interesting here is that the episode in which this all happens is called Two Swords, which is the name of a tarot card. There are actually quite a few references to tarot in Adventure Time, especially looking at the stakes art with the vampires named after those cards. Tarot cards are mostly bullshit. They are similar to astrology, magic, or economics. Everybody that practices those things pretends they understand it and they pretend it works, but they don't. And it doesn't. Nevertheless, it is interesting to explore those fantasies in the media we watch. The tarot card The Two Swords depicts a blindfolded person crossing two swords with a moon in the background. Most of the time there is also an ocean with islands in the background as well. The blindfold represents confusion about the person's plight and that they can neither see the problem nor the solution. They may also be missing important information which would make everything clearer. This is pretty much Fern in a nutshell. Fern is so blinded by thinking that he is Finn that he's unable to see himself clearly, and it seems that Fern is unaware that the curse is influencing him over time. We can even see a hint of that at the end of the Two Swords episode, where the curse seems to be controlling Fern's hand while he is sleeping. The corruption of Fern through the grass curse would only get worse over time, and adding fuel to the fire is probably everyone else knew. While Finn is totally fine with how Fern handles things, he might have been dismissing him without noticing. In the episode Do No Harm, Finn has to take care of Susan and leaves Finn with Jake. Jake seems to feel extremely uncomfortable, nevertheless they go together on an adventure to destroy They decide to beat up the grass wizard, and on the way there, Fern is extremely aggressive, destroying pretty much everything in his path. While Finn is violent, he was never as violent as Fern is, which might be causing further confusion with himself because he still has all of Finn's memories. While there are similarities between Finn and Fern, they're not the same, something Fern acknowledges towards the end of the episode, giving himself the name.
So from now on, call me Fern the Human.
And then stealing Starchy's bike.
Hello?
Excuse me, Fern needs this bike.
No!
After this, Fern, for the majority of the time, just stays for himself and is eventually asked by Finn to take the mantle of Hero of Ooh while he's away on a mission. Fern, still unsure about his abilities and what exactly he's supposed to be, is very hesitant, but Finn just tells him,
you can just do your own thing with it.
While this is a nice gesture, Finn might not be noticing that Fern is just completely lost. And from Fern's perspective, Finn just asks him to take over his own life. That is impossible though, because Fern is not Finn. Yes, Fern has all of Finn's memories, but they're not the same people. Towards the end of the episode, when Finn and the party are leaving on their mission, Fern finally meets PB and Marcy, and she just casually mentions,
Hey, aren't you that dude that totaled Starchy's motorcycle?
while true that Fern stole the bike, it's not much different to what other people do in Ooh. Marcy might not know Fern, but Fern has all of Fern's memories, so in his mind, they're still best friends. It might have been just a casual comment from Marcy, but for Fern it must have stung quite a bit. Also, even if true, it probably doesn't feel great to be accused of theft the first time you meet someone.
I'm Shelby the Worm, the gummy worm.
During the time Finn was away, the Ice Elemental managed to transform Ooh into Elemental Land, turning everyone into Elemental-themed citizens. Not that important. We want to focus on Fern. He was turned into a candy citizen alongside Lemongrab and Nectar, and therefore failed his mission of defending Ooh, at least in his mind. Once the disaster is reversed, Fern is once more reminded that he is not Finn and that he will never be like him. Finn doesn't fault Fern for anything, but in Fern's mind, he couldn't even complete a simple task of defending Ooh, something that Finn would have been able to do. At least in Fern's mind. This feeling of being a failure is further underlined once Finn and Fern have to deal with the remainders of Lich and Sweet Pea in the episode Whispers. Here we can clearly see that Fern is still very upset by the fact that he was unable to do anything during the Elementals incident. The fact that Finn seems to be better at everything than Fern might also not be helping.
Oh no, oh no, oh no!
And when Sweet Pea gets in trouble, Finn manages to calm him down with the help of Fern. But that's not what is going on in Fern's mind. Finn does praise Fern for good thinking, but it's not quite how it seems.
I just copied you. Is that thinking?
This question is promptly ignored by Finn, be it of ignorance or just negligence. In Fern's mind, he probably thinks I didn't really help, but synergizing with someone also requires thinking. Fern's feeling of being a failure is further reinforced when he's given the task to guard Sweet Pea and he fails at that as well. So, now Fern finds himself in this position of simultaneously being lost, confused, feeling like a failure, and rejected by himself and all the other people in Ooh, including friends and family. What could possibly go wrong?
Sure thing, Jake! I win!
Eventually, all of Fern's feelings will culminate in the idea that Finn is the reason why he isn't succeeding in life. And while of course not true, for Fern, it seems that way. Fern is not treated by others like he remembers because he's not Finn. He's unable to save Ooh or solve problems because he's not Finn. His own friends and family treat him like an outcast because he's not Finn. So his solution is to become Finn, which is possible because Fern has developed an ability to mimic Finn's appearance. In the episode 3 Buckets, Fern tricks Finn into a dungeon, locks him there, and then goes out to live Finn's life. Fortunately, Finn's robot arm has a drill option and so is able to flee the dungeon and confront Fern. Finn and Fern fight, culminating in Fern's death. Or does it? While Finn indeed uses robot arm to rip Fern apart, Fern is not that because we can see that Gumbolt is able to pick Fern's parts up and eventually rebuild him. Fern is still alive physically, but the old Fern that was lost, confused, felt like a failure and rejected by himself and by all of his friends and family is no more. The next time we see him, he's confident and sure of himself, but also low-key wanting to lop Finn's head off.
Finally, I win!
With Gumball, he has found a new family that accepts his violent ways and doesn't really try to change it. Finn and the gang also never really tried to change Fern, but they knowingly or unknowingly put expectations on him because he looked like Finn. For example, Finn always told Fern that he's cool with how Fern does stuff, but when it came to the actual situations, he rejected most of Fern's solutions. In Whispers, for example, Fern suggests cutting off Sweet Pea's Achilles, which technically would stop SP, but since Finn over time got less violent, he rejects that solution and goes the passive option, calming SP down. Jake seems always uneasy around Fern, and while he tries his best, Fern probably notices that a lot. We can see that on display when Fern mimics Finn and suddenly Jake doesn't treat him differently. I already mentioned the Marceline incident, but I can't really imagine that PB treats Fern much better. There are only two people I can imagine treat him like his own individual, and those people are Nepter and LSP. Nepter for the single reason that he treats everyone with empathy no matter who they are, and LSP because she treats everyone with apathy no matter who they are. Ironically, the two most extreme characters are the ones who probably truly get Fern on a deeper level. With Gumball, Fern seems to have found a new home, but you might have noticed that I did not mention Gumball as someone who truly gets Fern, and that's because he doesn't. For Gumball, Fern is just a pawn in a larger game.
You! Give me your lunch.
Towards the finale of Adventure Time, a war is about to break out between Gumbaldia and the Candy Kingdom, and Fern has become one of the High Guards in Gumbaldia. While it seems that Fern has found his place, most of the time he's in the background, either quite literally or in the sense that he's not important to the story. Eventually, war does break out between the Candy Kingdom and Gumbaldia, but Finn pulls a fast one and sends everyone
To the Shadow Realm, Jimbo.
There, PB, Gumball, Finn, and Fern are forced to confront their inner demons. Pretty early on, Gumball just leaves Fern, causing him to quite literally root himself. Well, a somewhat odd behavior, think about it. Fern has gone through a complete rejection by his friends, family, and technically himself. Now, his new family is also rejecting him. For Fern, there's nothing left. He lost everything. Or has he? No matter what Fern did to Finn, except for trying to kill him, Finn was always there for Fern, quite literally telling Fern that it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to be yourself. Fern just shouldn't go overboard. The feelings of being a failure are all in Fern's head. Quite literally, because when Finn forces Fern to pull out repressed memories, it becomes clear that Fern and Finn have very similar feelings of inadequacy. Both have gone through many hardships together and as individuals, to the point that some of those memories needed to be repressed. If you think about it, both have been cursed before, and well, Fern is currently cursed, both have been broken, and both have been lost. Sure, Finn and Fern are different, but they are also two sides of the same coin. Fern giving into the anger and rage that he has, and Finn mellowing out over time. With that understanding, both confront the repressed memories, and it turns out that the grass curse was the main reason why Fern was acting so aggressively. There are two ways I like to look at this. On the one side, it could be that the grass sword is responsible for every bad thing Fern did so far, basically excusing Finn's sword from every wrongdoing. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation. On the other hand, and my preferred interpretation, is that the grass curse was enhancing Finn's sword's feelings, no matter if positive or negative. Feeling a bit confused turns into completely feeling lost, feeling a bit sad turns into feeling like a failure, feeling a bit jealous turns into envy, to the point that Fern wants to kill Finn. We also notice the influence of the grass curse visually whenever Fern's eyes glow green. It seems that Finn's sword is still in control in those moments, but the grass curse is enhancing all of his feelings. Unfortunately, with the grass curse defeated, Fern is slowly falling apart because the curse was the thing giving him a physical body. Nevertheless, Fern takes up arms and helps the gang beat the final boss of Adventure Time, Golb. With his last breaths, he says his goodbye to Finn, and what is left of him is a sword seed, which in the future would turn into a tree with a sword in it. If Finn's sword is still there or not is left up to the viewer, but I like to think that Finn's sword had his warrior's death and was reincarnated in his original timeline.
Are you sure? I mean, Hero Biz is your whole thing.
While writing the script, the words broken, cursed, and lost kept coming up to describe Fern. The reality is that Fern is all of those things. He is cursed, he is broken, and he is lost. It seems that Fern was destined for tragedy from the start, and no matter what his friends or family did, he would end up in the same position as before, because without the curse he has no physical body, but the curse is also corrupting him at all times. Sure, we don't see much of Fern throughout the series, but what we see is so poignant that I don't even really care. Ultimately, Fern was doomed from birth. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you don't want this channel to be doomed, subscribe to the channel with notifications on because YouTube is stupid. Give me your money on Patreon or Ko-Fi or else I'm gonna curse you. Take care of yourselves and have a nice, wonderful